trade a guy, and then that guy is to go sit. And if he doesn't stay professional, then he's a cancer, and he's not good in someone's locker room, and he's the issue. At some point, as players, we need to be treated with the same respect and have the same rights that the team can have. Because as a player, you're the worst person in the world when you want a different situation. But a team can say they're trading you, and that man is to stay in shape. He is to stay professional, and if not, his career is on the line. At some point, this league has to protect the players from embarrassment like that.
Hey, everybody. Welcome on into First Take. I'm Charlie Arnold. We got Max Kellerman, Stephen A. Smith. Guys, we have a lot to get to. You just heard Draymond Green. Stephen A.
Charlie, listen, we are about to get into a very serious subject in regards to Draymond Green and Max Kellerman. I just wanted to say, before we get into that, I want to start off this show on a high note, Max. I want to show you how excited I am, how passionate I am, how good I feel this morning. Did you see my Knicks? Did you see them? Did you see him last night? You see Julius Randle drop that 44 points, Max Kellerman?
44.
Did you see it? I just want to make, before we get into Draymond Green, did you see Julius Randle drop 44? Did you see Julius Randle playing like an all-star? Did you see that the New York Knicks won 3 straight? Max Kellerman? There's some special things happening in Madison Square Garden. There's some special things, man. I'm just trying to tell you, Max. I'm just trying to tell you.
The best, Charlie?
I'm just trying to tell you, Max, there's some special things.
Look at this Knicks fan.
He's
like, we're a game below 500.
I love seeing him like this.
We're a game no one thought we could do it.
Let's not pay attention to such details. Let's think about the high moment right now, okay? Tom Thibodeau's got these boys playing hard, okay? I'm looking at good point guard play. I'm looking at dudes shooting. Julius Randle dropping 44. Hey, listen, man, we ain't seen that since Bernard King been at Madison Square Garden. We ain't seen that since Bernard King been at Madison. Well, actually, we saw it with Melo, but you know what I'm saying. I'm just saying.
Look, a lot of really positive things to, and I'm happy that you did. I'm happy we started on a high note because we do have some pretty serious comments to address, as you just heard Draymond Green. He sees a lot of discrepancies right now between the league and the players. So, Max, let's start with you. Do you agree with Draymond's comments?
No, I don't. And I think Draymond's confused here. I think that he wants his cake. He wants to eat his cake and have it too. Let's start with the James Harden, because James Harden and Andre Drummond are in 2 different situations. We know that superstars like James Harden have enormous leverage. They're going to get what they want. Look, James Harden got exactly what he wanted. What Draymond Green is talking about is the owners have more power than the players. Right, I'm pro-labor. I'm generally in these issues, I come down pro-labor. But the fact of the matter is that's the world we live in, certainly. If you amass huge pools of capital and you can own something, you usually have more power than the labor against which you negotiate, right? Okay, so the owners are running a de facto monopoly on basketball in North America. If you want to compete at the highest level and make a lot of money, got to play in the NBA. And the players are at a disadvantage when they come to the table for the collective bargaining sessions. But they get what they can, and the owners wind up better off. Stephen A., if Draymond wants players to have say in where they go every season, if they want all players to be treated that way, there are a couple solutions. One, the players can start a league. Not so easy to do, I know, but they could start a players' league. They could do it. It'd be difficult, but they could do it. That's one thing they can do. Here's another thing they could do. Sign 1-year deals. Just sign a series of 1-year deals. Some people do that. Michael Jordan did that at the end. 1-year contracts every year. If you sign a 1-year contract, every year you're a free agent. You can go wherever the hell you want to go. I mean, that's the truth. But if you sign a long-term deal, you're doing it for financial security. And even when you have no trade clauses built in, but especially when you don't, one of the things you're sacrificing in exchange for the multiples of the tens of millions that a superstar might make in one season, one of the things that you exchange for that is your freedom to choose where you're going to play every season. Mm-hmm. But here's the other thing, Stephen A. They don't really sacrifice that. Not the superstars. They'll play exactly. They will sign the contract, for the multi-year contract, right? And they'll still play wherever they want to play, even in the middle of that deal. They'll force themselves out, as James Harden did. They have enough leverage and enough juice to get that done. Now, something's going to have to give. If you're signed up multiple years and you've gotten that security and you're getting that money, and now you've decided I no longer want to play here and you want to force yourself out, you're going to have to look to extra extra legal or extra contractual ways of doing it. You're going to have to pout or claim injury or be a locker room cancer. But the upshot is this. Harden signed his deal, got all the money, still wound up on the team to which he wanted to be traded. And yes, his reputation did take a little bit of a hit to do it. That's the way it is. That's reality. If players want the ability to go anywhere, like when LeBron James got criticized for going to Miami, Stephen A., 100% on his side. He's a free agent. Go where you want. If you want to sign a series of one-year deals, be a free agent every year, I'll stand up for you right next to Draymond Green and say, hold on, time out. Why are you vilifying this dude? He's free to go where he wants. But Stephen A., if you're in the middle of a long-term deal and you get to play where you want to play, forgive me for not being overly sympathetic that your reputation takes a little bit of hit if, as Draymond admits, you dogged it in order to get traded.
Well, first of all, listen, I think you missed the boat here, and I'm pretty surprised that you missed the boat because you usually don't miss the boat on issues such as this nature. Now, I'll blame it to some degree on somewhat convoluted Draymond Green was or how he came across because it wasn't as clear to some people as it was to maybe somebody like me. But I understood exactly where he was coming from, and I completely agree with Draymond Green. And here's the reason why. Draymond Green, is talking about not just the optics, but the vitriol accorded to players that teams don't necessarily get. And that's unfavorable treatment in the direction of players. That's what he was alluding to. A team that wants the Detroit Pistons come out and announce they're trying to move Blake Griffin. So guess what? They're probably going to sit him down before they make a move. No problem. The Cleveland Cavaliers decided with Andre Drummond. No problem. But James Harden wants out, and he's vilified. Other players might want out, and they're vilified. It's only when it's in concert with the team they represent that everybody's okay with it. But if a team sits up there and says, we don't want you, we don't give a damn about you, they don't get crucified, they don't get vilified, they don't get held accountable in a court of public opinion. And so even though we somewhat understand that because a team is entirely different than an individual and the shrapnel of criticism that they're capable of absorbing is significantly more per se than an individual player, what Draymond Green as an individual player is pointing out, particularly in this day and time, black men who to some degree are empowered, whether directly or indirectly, and as a result, society as a whole resenting that the second they flex and exercise whatever level of power that they may have to get what they want, society turns against them. They call them malcontents, they call them problem children, they call them prima donnas, they excoriate them, etc., etc. And what Draymond is saying is, where's that same vitriol? Where's that same intensity when it comes to a team electing, in Andre Drummond's case, just to highlight and illuminate this discussion? You decide you don't want him. He's scheduled to play in the game. He leaves the bench, goes in the locker room, comes back outside in street clothes because you said, guess what? We want to focus on Jared Allen. That's going to compromise your minutes. As a result, you're probably not going to be here. So guess what? Not only do you not play, but you have to sit on the bench in street clothes until we say otherwise. That's kind of humiliating. Yeah. I mean, just let him go home. Let him relax. Let him chill out. Like Detroit evidently is doing with Blake Griffin until you make a move. For him to sit on a bench in street clothes when he's perfectly healthy, averaging what he's averaging, 15 points, 13 rebounds a game, etc. He's not a scrub. This is not a dude that's not healthy. This is not a dude that's not ready to play. Why didn't you play him? And if you're not going to play him, let him go home. But to have him come on the bench, sit there in street clothes, and all under the guise of professionalism because we're in this together and we're going to move you, etc., etc., it still makes you look bad. It subjects you to a level of embarrassment, as Draymond Green pointed out, that's completely unnecessary. And if a player decides, guess what? I don't want to play. Think about it. Put it to you this way, Max. What if James Harden or even Andre Drummond or Blake Griffin sat up there and literally said, I want out. So I'm going to be with the team and I'm going to sit on the bench, but I'm not playing because I want out of here. Everybody would have lost their damn mind. Who the hell does that player think he is? But the team can do it. And it's not a problem. That's what Draymond Green was trying to explain. And that's not really about the teams. It's not really about the players. It's really about us as the fourth estate, as members of the media, as individuals who disseminate a commentary and punditry about a particular player, whatever. He's like, where's the consistency? And I think Draymond Green makes a very, very valid point when he says that. Because there isn't consistency when it comes to the players.
I mean, Stephen A., I think you opened up a whole can of worms, like a whole slew of issues to discuss.
What I do.
But I would say, first of all, let's start with the fourth estate to begin with. You know, we are the fourth estate. When you talk about the most influential sports talk shows, you know, here we are on First Take. You're defending Draymond's point of view.
Absolutely.
When James Harden wanted to be traded, I got on TV and told the Rockets, you're going to have to trade him. Don't drag this out. Let's not be foolish. James Harden's going to get what he wants. You know, I wouldn't say that the fourth estate has fallen down and simply excoriated the players and not held the teams accountable. The other bigger issue to me is the racial component. As I said yesterday when it came to the NFL and the Jaguars situation, there is an enormous overlap with labor issues and racial issues in this country and in sports leagues. When you said black men, largely the players, right? When we say labor, the players, we are referring to predominantly African-American men in this country, right? That's what we're talking about, not the foreign-born players. The ownership level is almost, with the exception of Michael Jordan, exclusively white. And by the way, Jordan gets to be an owner. It's like what Chris Rock said about his neighbor being a dentist. You know, Chris Rock, one of the most successful people in the world, his neighbor is a white dentist. He said, in order for that if my neighbor were a black dentist, he would have had to invent teeth in order to live in my neighborhood, right? So the point is, the one owner that's not white is the greatest athlete who ever lived. So yes, the owners who get to make these decisions and come out clean are almost exclusively white, and the players who are forced to use methods that can turn the public and press against them are usually African American. There is a racial overlap there,
I'm going to put it simpler and shorter for you. You're not entirely correct there, because before Michael Jordan became the owner of the Charlotte Hornets, he was a minority owner with the Charlotte Bobcats. The majority owner was a gentleman by the name of Bob Johnson, who was not the greatest player in the world, but he's one of the greatest businessmen, and he was a black man and used to own BET and was worth $1.7 billion. And he had a financial portfolio that Larry Bird and his group, who wanted to buy the team, did not have at that particular moment in time. So maybe that should be a lesson to a lot of black folks out there who have these resources, pool it together and make a push to own an NBA franchise. And let's see if the Board of Governors with the NBA would support that. And that could be an interesting discussion moving forward.
Yeah. Well, until something like that happens, it's going to be interesting to see in the coming days which players publicly come forward and really going to talk about this later on in the show. So let's move on for now, because we do have more information as it pertains to Anthony Davis and his injury. We do now know that for the next 2 to 3 weeks after he had an MRI yesterday, that he has a calf strain, also aggravated tendinosis suffered from Sunday's game. And that is reported by a source telling Adrian Wojnarowski. So he is unlikely to return to the lineup prior to the All-Star break. So Stephen A., I ask you, do you believe that AD's injury is good or bad for LeBron James?
Well, to me, I don't think it's good for LeBron James at all, but I really wanted to hear what Max Kellerman had to say about this, because I have a feeling I'm going to get at him for something that he said to me earlier. So, Max, if you don't mind, I'd like you to go first here, sir.
Sure. I think so long as this is temporary, so long as AD can come back this year at some point, let's say a month from now, as you said yesterday, this can be very good. This will be very good for LeBron James and the Lakers. Because, Stephen A., every season, remember Game 1 against the Clippers last year? Remember those early season struggles in Miami and then later Cleveland? Every year, LeBron James, who's in the finals every season, has to figure out how to lead a group of guys to the promised land. And early in the season, he needs to figure out what everyone can do, how he can bring them along, how he can build them up, who he can rely on, how he can build up the guys he can't rely on and put them in positions. It's like a coach on the floor where he will be able to rely on them and they'll come through. With Anthony Davis, that really masks a lot of things. If you have LeBron and AD, that will mask a lot of things on any team. What's going to happen now is Kuzma and others had to step up yesterday, is guys on the team, role players, will be given responsibility that they simply wouldn't have if AD's in the lineup. And not just 1 or 2 games, Stephen A., but for many games while AD is resting and recovering. And that will build the team up so that when AD comes back, they are more equipped to deal with the playoffs than they would have been otherwise. I think this will turn out to be a good thing for the Lakers, provided AD comes back.
Well, I get the provider, I get the caveat there. I would tell you, I don't think this is going to be a good thing at all. I think the Lakers right now, I think their championship aspirations are compromised. Let me be very, very clear. There is no way in hell the Los Angeles Lakers are winning the championship without Anthony Davis. And I'm talking about Anthony Davis at 100%. I think that Ty Lue is doing an exceptional job with the Los Angeles Clippers and is to be commended for it. I think Quinn Snyder and those boys in Utah have been sensational. We can't ignore them. I think the Denver Nuggets, they tend to come on strong as the season progresses, and I'm certainly not going to rule out Dame Dollar and the Portland Trail Blazers. Without Anthony Davis, the Lakers are going home early. They'll make the playoffs, but they're going home. They're not going to the championship, okay? Let me put that out there first. Secondly, and more importantly, here's why it's a bad thing, because LeBron is 36 and he's not getting any younger. And the reality of the situation is that he's going to be out there on the court trying to carry a load and having to carry a heavier load than he had anticipated. Now, is he equipped to deal with it for a season? Sure. But who knows what kind of toll that's ultimately going to take on him and his body moving forward. Because if I'm the Los Angeles Lakers, Max Kellerman, I'll leave Anthony Davis out at least a month. Here's where I get scared. I'm hearing the same language that was used when Kevin Durant got injured. When we talk about the calf strain. I'm hearing the same language. It sounds eerily similar. And so for me, when I listen to that and I hear that, I know Anthony Davis hears it. And so, all right, how all out are you going to go when you're absolutely positively petrified you might tear your Achilles? Because if he tears his Achilles, he's out for next season. He's out for next season. Not just this year. He's out for next season as well, with LeBron being 37 years of age. So to me, if there's any way that I can do this, if you were to tell me, Max, if Anthony Davis sits out for the rest of the season, he'll be fine moving forward. I would sit Anthony Davis out for the rest of the year. Seriously. Just to make sure he's ready for the last 2 years of LeBron James' career. That's how I view it. I don't know whether it's going to be
Stephen
2 years, 3
let's
years,
say,
1 year. But I'm saying I would just sit up there. I wouldn't take any chances with Anthony Davis because Anthony Davis is tied to LeBron. And listen, LeBron's interests are not necessarily aligned with the Lakers. Lakers are long-term because they want Anthony Davis here for years to come, long after LeBron is gone. In the case of LeBron, you're 36 years old. It's your 18th year in the league. You ain't taking anything for granted. You're trying to win now. So it's not necessarily aligned, his interest with that of the Lakers, even though they both align when it comes to Anthony Davis. If I'm the Lakers, it's not even, I already got that chip. I'm already back to relevancy. I'm the reigning champion. I don't even play Anthony Davis. I might not play him for the rest of the year. Maybe.
But they're saying 2 to 3 weeks. And let's say if he's gone for the season, of course, the Lakers are finished. They're not going to win a championship without AD in this roster, right? But let's say it's 2 to 3 weeks, but instead of that, they double it. It's 4 to 6 weeks, just to be careful.
Which I think they should.
And he comes back okay. Then you have guys on this roster like Taylor Horton Tucker. Remember what he was doing in the preseason? You have guys like Caruso who've played beyond where people thought they could play, KCP, et cetera, et cetera. The point is, if LeBron is able to build those guys up and find dimensions in their game that they're not normally called upon to put forth, and gets that group of guys going, when AD comes back, it will be more likely, not less, that the Lakers repeat.
Okay. Charlie, we're going to end this segment this way. Max, allow me to end the segment this way. If Anthony Davis is any less than 85%, there is no way in hell the Lakers are winning the championship. I promise you that. Now, you can debate whether they come out of the West or not, and I don't think they'll do that. But they damn sure ain't beating the Brooklyn Nets, who I believe is going to the finals. They ain't beating Brooklyn with that offensive firepower unless Anthony Davis is at least 85%. LeBron's and everybody else is at 100%. There is no way in hell.
Might not get by the Clippers, the Jazz, or the Nuggets.
Let me be very clear about that. Let me be very clear. I'm looking towards the future. Because this season, to me, the way Anthony Davis is looking right now, that calf, which could be an Achilles, I got news for you. Ain't no championship a part of the equation. It's a wrap.
Yeah, well, injuries like this, it's been lingering for Anthony Davis. He sat out 2 games, thought he felt better, came back, already re-aggravated himself, had a calf strain. So you're right, might be worth just sitting out, seeing what's up for next season. All right, guys, let's leave it there because we have some NFL to get to in the next block. We have Carson Wentz to talk about because Dak Prescott still has not been signed to a long-term deal in Dallas and is hoping to avoid being slapped with the franchise tag for a second straight year. Ed Werder joined KJZ on the phone yesterday to discuss the talk swirling around the quarterback.
Unless the Cowboys give Dak Prescott exactly what he wants, I don't see Dak having any reason to do anything until the March 9th deadline to be designated a franchise player, because that's when he'll maximize his leverage. I talked to Mike McCartney, who was the agent for Kirk Cousins, who's the only quarterback in the NFL to play on the tag twice, which is what Dak Prescott is looking at. And I think he felt like he had incredible leverage against Washington, and he converted that into an $84 million total guaranteed deal that remains the biggest in the NFL when he moved him to Washington after the second franchise. But I don't think he ever felt like he had the kind of leverage that Dak Prescott and Todd France have in the current negotiation between the Cowboys and Dak Prescott, because Dak's a far better, more accomplished quarterback than Kirk Cousins was at the time that he was tagged for the second time.
Okay, Max, now let's preface this. If this is true, do you believe that Dak is worth that $40 million a season?
I can't believe I'm saying this. Yes! Yes, he's easily worth it. First of all, Ed Werder made a great point, which we didn't play, which is the Cowboys make no sense here. They so wanted a 5th year of control over Dak, right? They wanted that 5th year. And his agent said, no, only 4 years. They so wanted that extra year that instead of having 4 years of control, they have 1 year of control. It doesn't make sense the way they're negotiating this. But yes, he's worth the $40 million. Guys, not only is he a more accomplished and better quarterback than Kirk Cousins was at the time, and so his leverage is even greater, it goes deeper than that. Look at the NFC East. The NFC East is in disarray. Washington went to the playoffs last year as a sub-500 team. They just paid Heineke backup quarterback money. He may be their starter. Daniel Jones was no better in his second year, which was supposed to be your development year, I could tell you as a Giants fan, than his first year. And the Eagles, Carson Wentz is so bad, they're not going to get a lot for him, I don't think. And he's on his way out of town. Jalen Hurts, it's not that he was incredible, it's that at least he wasn't Carson Wentz. The NFC East is in such bad shape that a quarterback like Dak, who we can see, the marketplace, just a franchise tag, is almost $32 million. But in the NFC East over the next couple of years, he is especially valuable. So, Stephen A., you have to figure the average annual value will be more than the franchise tag. So what are they quibbling about here? They want to give him 35 and he wants 40? Well, you better give that man his money, and you better do it soon.
Well, listen, I mean, Jerry Jones definitely played himself in regards to this. We know he's mishandled this, et cetera, et cetera. But to answer the question directly, are you worth $40 million? No. I think that he's damn good. You know, I believe in Dak. I'm very fond of him, the whole bit. But if we just using the word worth, we're not talking about what he can get. We're not talking about what he should get because of Jerry Jones' stupidity or stubbornness or whatever word you think is appropriate. We're just talking about in terms of worth. Well, Patrick Mahomes is worth 40. His average salary is like at $45 million. Deshaun Watson is scheduled to get paid about $39 million this year, and we don't think that Dak is better than him, even though we think Dak is pretty damn good. But then again, you think about a guy like Aaron Rodgers. I think his number is at about $33.5 million, along with Jared Goff. We look at Russell Wilson and Ben Roethlisberger; they're at 35 and 34 respectively. So throwing Dak in there at number 3, let's say at about 37, 38 million is about right. And not only that, they're not coming off a nasty broken ankle, broken leg injury the way Dak Prescott is. So we got to take that into consideration as well. And I do understand where Dak is coming from, but I think it gets to a point where this may be more about his agent than Dak Prescott itself. Because, again, if you're going to sit up there and quibble over $1 million or $2 million a year. So we're arguing about $38 million instead of $40 million. Really, when you just had that nasty injury, when you could easily come back and it could happen again in a violent sport that is the NFL, you got to take those things into consideration as well. And at some point in time, you know, I understand you want to go for the risk and what have you, but we also get to look at Dak Prescott, and even though he's had a winning record like at 42-27 as a starting quarterback, we ain't bragging about the Dallas Cowboys making it to an NFC Championship game or a Super Bowl appearance. That has not happened in his 4 years as a starter for the Dallas Cowboys. We got to take all of those things into consideration when we're asking about what you're worth. You're up there. You definitely deserve consideration. There's no question about it. But in the end, particularly coming off of that nasty injury, would I sit up there and give you a multi-year deal at an average of $40 million a year coming off that nasty ankle break, even though it should have never come to that? They should have been gave you a long-term deal. Now that I'm in this position, I'm not going to guarantee you more money than every quarterback in the National Football League other than Patrick Mahomes. There's nothing that you've done to deserve that.
Oh.
That might be going a little bit too far.
Couple of things. It's true they haven't been in the Super Bowl, but their offense was totally elite with Dak in it, and I was expecting it to stay, to not drop off that much with Andy Dalton, but it did. It dropped off tremendously. What Dak demonstrated and what his absence demonstrated in a way last year, we're talking about Anthony Davis in the last segment, what Dak's absence demonstrated was his value to the offense. With him, absolutely elite, top-flight NFL offense, one of the very best. Without him, also Rams. He has a lot of value. Second, where he ranks in terms of the salaries, do I think quarterbacks get paid disproportionately or proportionally too much of the salary cap? Yes. I mean, if you took the salary cap away, they're all worth more. But with the salary cap, probably many of them are overpaid. But what we know, Stephen A., is the next guy up usually resets the market if he's really good. And Dak is really good. You know, that guy usually resets the market, or it comes close to it, whether it's Goff, whether it's Wentz. And what Mahomes and Deshaun Watson have done, because they're the very best, especially Mahomes, is reset things. The fact is, Dak wouldn't be number one. He wouldn't be ahead of Mahomes. Now, ahead of Deshaun, he has more leverage than Deshaun had because of what I mentioned. The division is so weak and the offense so dependent upon him that, Stephen A., if he's worth 38 normally, he's worth 40 right now.
Couple of things. Number one, just because you prove you're a significant upgrade to Andy Dalton doesn't mean that you're on the level of Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes or an Aaron Rodgers for that matter. That's number one. Number two, those first four games that he played before the fifth game where he cracked his ankle against the New York Giants. Let's keep in mind, you scored 17 in that opening loss to the Los Angeles Rams. No shame there with that defense. But then the next three games, remember the dumbest team in the NFL, the Atlanta Falcons, with what they messed up. You beat them 40-39. You beat Seattle before Seattle really upgraded their defense with Dunbar and those boys. And then, of course, you beat Cleveland, who was struggling. So what I'm saying to you is that, again, yeah, he performed, but I got to consider the level of competition that you're going against at that particular moment in time. Not to mention the fact that I don't think there's any shame in being the third highest paid guy in the National Football League coming off a nasty ankle break. I just don't believe that. I think that if he was 100% healthy and Dallas had a more successful season and he was on par to do that, of course, that's a different argument. But considering how his health has been severely compromised, for you to be sitting back, with a cast on, walking around probably right about now, all right, and talking about you're worth $40 million a year on a multi-year deal, no, I'm not going to go with that. I'm just not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, a long-term deal is the goal. The franchise tag period does start next week on the 23rd. That will be worth $37.7 million for Dak. We'll see if he can avoid following Kirk Cousins' footsteps in that regard. Second year in a row. All right, guys, let's leave it there. We got more to get to right here on First Take. Yeah, almost there. Only a few million off. No big deal, right? LeBron James wants ring number 5, but which teams in the West will stand in his way to get it? Stephen A. and Max here to tell you who could cost the Lakers a trip to the finals. Plus, where will Carson Wentz be playing this coming season? You will not believe where the guys are predicting he will go. Don't go anywhere.
Arizona's going to stay. Touchdown, Houston!
That's just in my DNA.
Prescott strolls into the end zone,
Throw rolling, extends the plate, fires to the end zone. Touchdown 49ers!
I'm just as hungry as ever.
Perfectly thrown by Carson Wentz.
He takes the snap, he's going to run it, and he waltzes into the end zone.
Russ?
And absolutely perfect to DK Metcalf.
You tell me where he's going, and that carousel will keep spinning on and on, around and around.
All right, and now it is time to continue our QB continued series. That's my quarterback. We're taking a look at some of the teams around the league with some uncertainty under center, and we're going to predict who will be their week 1 starter. So what do you say? Let's start in the NFC North with the Chicago Bears. Now, our Adam Schefter, he's already put it out there. This is expected to be an unprecedented offseason of quarterback movement. And the Bears, right up there with an uncertain situation under center. Mitchell Trubisky, a free agent now. Nick Foles, still under contract. But the feeling is someone new will be under the helm soon enough. At the helm, rather. But, Max, I want to ask you, who's going to be the week 1 starter for the Bears?
Carson Wentz. Chicago Nets never gets quarterback right. My whole life, they've never gotten quarterback right, the Bears. So why start now? Carson Wentz will be the week 1 starter. What the Bears are dealing with is an offensive line that has a hard time protecting the quarterback. So they'd like a guy who can throw down the field like Nick Foles. But Nick Foles can't move around and that line can't protect him. So they need a guy who's mobile like Mitch Trubisky. But Trubisky can't throw it down the field. Carson Wentz has shown that he is both mobile and he has the ability he's shown in the past to throw it down the field. So he checks both boxes. In addition, John DeFilippo was his quarterback's coach, Wentz's quarterback's coach, when he had his best season in 2017. Not only doing all the things I just mentioned, but was great on the money down, on third down, something he's been awful at recently, the worst in the league this season. And DeFilippo has reportedly said he thinks he can fix Wentz. He has to get in there and fix them. I think other teams might be gun shy if they don't have a guy on the staff who is experienced with Wentz. DeFilippo, by the way, was Wentz's quarterback's coach in Philadelphia. He's been promoted now. He's the passing game coordinator in Chicago. I think the connection is there. I think the need is there. I think the misguided way the Bears think about quarterbacks is there. I think they're going to make a deal.
Can't see it happening, Max Kellerman, particularly if Nick Foles is there. Is Nick Foles still there? I mean, I don't recall correctly. I might have, it's amnesia. It might be selective, may not be. But isn't Nick Foles still there? Isn't the guy that took Carson Wentz's job? Isn't the one that ultimately capitalized off of Carson Wentz's injury, guided them to a Super Bowl, and had the Eagles locker room divided because half the dudes in there wanted Nick Foles to be the quarterback, the other half wanted Carson Wentz? Isn't that Nick Foles still in Chicago now? Last time I checked. So guess what? Yep. I can't see the Bears trying to move their problem, trying to move Eagles' old problems from Philadelphia to Chicago. I don't see that. I don't see that with Nagy. I just don't see that happening. I don't see it because Nagy is in a different situation with Pace and those boys. I don't see that happening. And I got to tell you something about Mitchell Trubisky. He threw 8 interceptions last year, just like he did the season before, threw for over 2,000 yards. We get all of that. Completed a better percentage of his passes than Nick Foles did this past season. I look at Mitchell Trubisky, and guess what, Max? As awful as we thought he was at times, and as much faith as we lacked in Mitchell Trubisky, Max, I don't think we ever talked about him as badly as we talked about Carson Wentz last season. So why am I making that move? Why am I thinking about Carson Wentz coming to Chicago instead of Mitchell Trubisky? If they're going to lose Mitchell Trubisky, it ain't going to be because of Carson Wentz. I don't see it at all. I don't see that at all. I see Mitchell Trubisky staying right there in Chicago. I don't think they'd be able to get anybody else outside of Carson Wentz, and I don't think you sacrifice Mitchell Trubisky and throw him to the wolves in favor of Carson Wentz, who may very well be worse, particularly with your offensive line being questionable, to say the least. Your running game, even though I like David Montgomery, your running game being suspect as well. I don't see that. I really don't.
I think the running game's also an offensive line issue, but yeah, you and I agree about that. I prefer Trubisky to Wentz too. The fact is, the Chicago Bears always get this wrong. I think they'll get it wrong again. And by the way, when you talk about the so-called problems in Philly, The last time Wentz and Foles played together, first they won a Super Bowl, and then they did a damn good job trying to defend it. Don't forget, they won a playoff game on the road against Chicago with Foles, and then they went to New Orleans, almost beat the Saints, right? So I think that those two together actually have worked in the past. I don't know that they could afford to have both of those guys on the same team right now.
That's what I'm saying.
But I think that especially because of the DiFilippo connection, there's going to be the belief in Chicago that he can fix Wentz. And Wentz has mobility, not as mobile as Trubisky, but he's mobile and he has an arm.
How can you fix Wentz but not fix
because Trubisky? Because Trubisky's never thrown it down the field. That's really his problem. I agree with you about Trubisky, like his attitude is better. He took his benching like a man. Didn't undermine the team. Didn't leak to the press on game day undermining the quarterback. Was a trooper. By the way, got the job back and played better when he got the job back. Good for him, and I would prefer him to Wentz. But I think what they recognize is Trubisky's floor is kind of low, and his ceiling isn't that high. Wentz's floor is low, but they look at him and think at least he has a high ceiling, and the last time that dude was his quarterback's coach, he hit it. So I think they're going to try to do that again. And as you mentioned, Stephen A., what are the options for Chicago right now?
Well, the option
is to keep Mitchell Trubisky. Who else can they go get?
The option is to keep Mitchell Trubisky, who's a better runner of the football than a Carson Wentz. Last year was a better passer of the football than Carson Wentz. He went from completing 63% of his passes the year before. Mitchell Trubisky last year completed 67% of his passes. Let's pump the brakes a little bit when we're condemning Chicago for picking Mitchell Trubisky because they passed on Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, not because he's worse than Carson Wentz was. That's the difference.
That is a shameful thought to think about. Now let's look at Carson Wentz. According to Elias, he's just the fourth player to lead the league in time sacked, also interceptions. Max, you say the Bears can fix him? We'll see about that. All right, guys, we got to leave it there. We have more to get to coming up.
I'm actually with Stephen A on
exactly.
this. They think they can
fix
him.
We'll see. We'll see if they can follow through. All right, guys, LeBron James, he's looking for that fifth ring, but there's some teams in the West that could stand in his way. Stephen A and Max here to tell you who are the West with the Utah Jazz on a hot streak with 8 straight wins, and the Clippers winning 8 of the last 11. Meanwhile, the Lakers pushing on as they continue with no timetable for Anthony Davis's return. So, Stephen A, who is the biggest threat to the Lakers in the West? Is it the Jazz or is it the Clippers?
Is that for me or Max?
Yeah.
That's for you, Stephen A.
At this particular moment, I'm going to have to go with the Jazz. And it's strictly because of depth. I understand that they don't have Kawhi Leonard and they don't have Paul George, but I believe in Donovan Mitchell. I believe that Donovan Mitchell is a stud. Now, I'm not an overall believer in the Jazz in terms of them knocking off a healthy Los Angeles Lakers squad, which is the position that I took yesterday. But I will tell you that if the Anthony Davis is down and out, when I look at the Jazz as more formidable because I look at them as a deeper team, and I look at Donovan Mitchell as a superstar in the making. If he's not already there, he is just something special. He doesn't fold or fade come playoff time. He's going to make sure his presence is felt. And then I look at what they do defensively. They're like third in the league defensively. They're fourth offensively. They distribute the ball. They've got how many dudes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different dudes averaging 11.5 points or better on this squad. You've got a guy in Royce O'Neal who's a defensive ace on the perimeter, and a guy in Rudy Gobert who's a defensive player of the year and a candidate for that award practically every single year. And so you've got defense on the interior, you've got defense on the perimeter, and you've got a cat like Donovan Mitchell, who's a flat-out stud. Mike Conley has been playing well. Bogdanovich was a big-time pickup. I just look at them right now in terms of their depth. And if the Lakers are not standing there, then ultimately with the Clippers or anybody else, it comes down to 1 or 2 players. The Clippers with Kawhi, Paul George, Denver with Jamal Murray or the Joker. Portland with Nurkic or McCollum rather, and Dame Dollar. But Utah, they can hit you in a multitude of ways, and that's why I have to look at them and say, if the Lakers can't go, they could be a bigger threat to anybody.
Well, I actually think the Clippers are also extremely deep. I admit this is extremely close. because Donovan Mitchell showed in the playoffs, Stephen A., that when it matters most, he is a superstar. Whether he's a star or a superstar normally, when it matters most, he's a superstar. We'll see if Mike Conley can be that too, and then you have a 1-2 punch, maybe. And Paul George also needs to show he can be that deuce to Kawhi's ace. But what it comes down to for me is, do I want Kawhi Leonard and Paul George or Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley? I want Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And I have to believe one of these postseasons, Paul George is really going to show up. But I like the long, athletic, elite two-way wing players. And that's what the Clippers have. In terms of the depth, you're absolutely right to point out the Jazz depth and Royce O'Neal and guys like that who can really 3-and-D. You know, a lot of times the team has a guy on the bench. Oh, he's our 3-and-D player. Not really, in name mainly, but a guy like O'Neal's a real 3-and-D guy, an elite guy in that respect. And you point out Gobert and all the different parts that they have. Bogdanovich, they really do have a lot of good parts. So do the Clippers. And by the way, they've been all banged up. Even Batum is starting to get nicked up now, right? And Patrick Beverley's missed time, and Kawhi and Paul George. They're only 2.5 games behind the Jazz in spite of all those injuries. So they have their big two, but they also have Ibaka, and they also have Patrick Beverley, and they also have Lou Williams, and they also have Marcus Morris. And I mentioned Nick Batum, who's had a career renaissance, and he's a very good player when healthy and on the floor and motivated, which he seems to be. I haven't even mentioned, Reggie Jackson or they like the Jazz, are an extremely well-coached Ty Lue, Quinn Snyder, both elite coaches, an extremely well-coached and deep team. For me, it comes down to whose 1-2 punch do you like best? I like the Clippers a little more than the Jazz.
Well, I don't view the Jazz as a 1-2 punch. I think their one punch is their defense. Their 1-2 punch is Donovan Mitchell and his supporting cast, whoever that may be on a night-in, night-out basis. It could be Conley one night, Bogdanovich another night, Rudy Gobert another night, et cetera, et cetera. But they are an elite defensive team, in my estimation. Not to say that the Clippers are not, but they definitely are. Number two, I've got the backdrop of two dudes folding and gold in Game 7. Number three, I'm not a fan of the Luke Kennard pickup. I mean, I know he's no scrub and he can shoot the ball, but I've never been a fan of that. You know, to me, to some degree, and I don't know how because I need to watch them a little bit more because obviously I'm a very, very busy man, hosting 3 damn shows for crying out loud. I got to tell you, Lou Williams doesn't seem to be like himself. I think that something has compromised him to some degree. Don't get me wrong, he's still averaging like 12 a game, whatever, but this is Lou we talking about here. This is Lou Williams. You understand? 6th man of the year and all that. I mean, this dude right here, he is a scoring machine, and I'm not seeing what I'm accustomed to seeing him, and I saw his minutes compromised a bit early in the season. I was wondering what the hell's going on with Ty Lue, who I think is a Coach of the Year candidate, by the way. I think he's doing a hell of a job. But in the end, what it comes down to is that the Clippers, you know where they're going, and you know who they're going to rely upon when all is said and done. And it's going to come down to Kawhi and Paul George. I got news for you. Crunch time, money on the line. There are very, very few people in this world that I'd be more comfortable giving the ball to than Donovan Mitchell. The brother is a stud.
I'm with you. Donovan Mitchell's a stud.
He is the Dwayne Wade 2.0. He's the new version of Dwayne Wade. That's who Donovan Mitchell is to me.
Well, yeah, either 2.0 or 0.9.
All right, whatever works.
We don't know if he's 2.0.
You know what I'm
but
saying?
He is. I get it about the Dwayne Wade comparison. I'm a huge Donovan Mitchell fan. But in spite of Kawhi's choke in Game 7, Stephen A., he had another all-time great playoff run last year, followed by one of the greatest postseasons of all time the year before. He's a 2-time Finals MVP. So Kawhi, I also very much trust in that situation. One thing I'll say is the Clippers may have the best 2 players in the series, maybe, depending on how Paul George plays. But the Jazz are a little deeper on top. Like Bogdanovich and Gobert are better than anyone else other than the big 2 on the Clippers. I want to point this out, though. When Kawhi and Paul George have been on the court together this season, you can argue the Clippers have been the best team in basketball. They are outscoring opponents per 100 possessions
except
by
for when
over
they lost to
20
Brooklyn.
points. They've been unstoppable.
Except for when they lost to Brooklyn. And I'll end it by saying this, Max Kellerman, something for you to sit on, you and Charlie. That's another angle about the Anthony Davis injury. You let us down by not meeting LeBron in the conference finals last year, Kawhi Leonard. Well, with Anthony Davis out, this might be the Clippers' best chance ever. If Anthony Davis isn't 100% and somehow, some way somebody else comes out of the West other than the Clippers, if Anthony Davis goes down for the Lakers.
Are you hearing anything? Are you hearing anything about AD?
No, Max. I'm just worried because the kids. I'm not hearing anything about it. I'm glad you asked that question. I'm not hearing anything about it. I'm just worried. But if you're the Clippers and Anthony Davis goes down and he can't come back close to 100%, there's no excuse for the Clippers. Because if you don't win this year, you may never win anything with Kawhi and Paul George. And I'm rooting for Paul George.
Yeah, we're all rooting for Paul George, but Stephen A., to your point about the Jazz, they're doing some big things right now. Last night, they became the first team in NBA history to record 17 double-digit wins over the course of 20 games. So we'll see what happens in the West, gentlemen. All right, let's move on because, of course, we have so much more to get to. We're getting Steph Curry and the Warriors. Our coverage starting with Stephen A.'s pregame Sports Center at 7 o'clock. The Detroit Pistons and six-time NBA All-Star Blake Griffin have agreed to sit Griffin until they can work out a resolution on his playing future. Now, there is a caveat here, and that's just how much money Griffin is owed through the next few years. $36.6 million this season and $39 million in 21 through 22. All right, Max, we hate to be insulting here, but the question has to be asked, is Blake Griffin really just a high-priced role player at this point?
Of course. And that's a killer for me to say. I remember when he broke in, I was out in L.A., Stephen A., when he first, he had that rookie season where he was hurt, and then he came out his second year, his first full season playing, and he was one of the most spectacular players I've ever seen. I'll tell my grandkids if they ask, who are the most spectacular players you've ever seen? I will remember a young Blake Griffin. He was like that. But, yeah, he's done as an elite player or even a good player. Jalen Rose on Countdown, Stephen A. brought this up. This dude hasn't dunked since 2019. 2019! I mean, do you remember when Barack Obama, back in the day, President Obama said he wanted Blake to develop a 15-footer, right? Because all he did was dunk. He hasn't dunked in 2 calendar years. So you take that away from Blake Griffin, and what is he now? He's a high-priced role player, extremely high-priced. And what role does he even fill? He's never been a defender. He's just not built that way. Not like one of these long-armed, wiry defenders, right? He shoots a lot of threes, but he doesn't hit them at nearly an acceptable rate. He's not a great rebounder or anything like that because he doesn't have the hops anymore. What does he do? He's a high-priced role player. I wish him the best, but if you're going to ask me point blank, I don't mean to be insulting, but that is the truth.
I don't feel that way, Max Kellerman. I do believe that he's still a starter in this league, but I will concede he has not looked that way. And there's a perfectly logical explanation to it, Max. And again, I'm shocked that you would miss this. Max, enthusiasm does have a lot to do with how you perform from time to time. If your interest is here, you perform at a peak level. If it's down here, and when you look at Blake Griffin, to be in Southern California, which is where I am now, by the way, and it's La and it's the palm trees, Max, and all of those different things, Max Kellerman, and you turn around and you're in Detroit, Michigan, which last I checked just suffered like 9 inches of snow today, and it's just not the same, Max. I mean, you're just not the same. So, if you're depressed and you're just not interested in all of that other stuff, I mean, that's hard. That's hard. Now, here's what I will say. I've never liked to see Blake Griffin shooting jumpers. You're a big enough boy. You got hops still. Take it to the hole, go in the post, do what you got to do instead of faking like LeBron James slapped you in the face and being on the flop reels and all of this other stuff. Go out there and be that man amongst boys. But I do believe that if you're in a situation that you're not happy with and you're miserable and it's tough pulling yourself out of bed to get up to work in the morning, I do think that it's tough. It could be tough for you to perform on a night in, night out basis. Remember, last year he only played 18 games. He was injured last year. So it was the year before that he had dunked, like Jalen Rose accurately pointed out. And this year, in the first 20 games or so, that hasn't been the case, and he's resigned and stuff to shooting jump shots or whatever. Me personally, I think he could go back to the Clippers and help. But guess what? In order to do that, you know what he needs to do? Apologize to owner Steve Ballmer. Because when the man stands near midcourt, waiting for you to finish shoot around, just to shake your hand and to say hello to you, and you just run off and disrespect them like you did, that was completely uncalled for. It was unprofessional, and it was unnecessary. Yeah, the man traded you and what have you, but what have you done to show him that he's wrong? Since you've been in Detroit, you've done nothing to show Steve Ballmer that he was wrong for moving on and moving in a different direction from you. So I think those are the kind of things that we need to think about. But do I think that Blake Griffin could go back to the Clippers and help the Clippers? Yeah, I think he could do it. I think he can. I don't want to see him on the Lakers. I don't think that's the right way for him to go.
I think that's a great idea.
But the Clippers, yeah.
I think that's a nice story to tell. Like, I like that story. If he could go back to the Clippers and be a part of something there and bring it back to where it started, right? Mm-hmm. But as a role player, as a high-priced role player, like, that's just the truth, Stephen A. I don't care how much of a pep in your step is taken out from going from Southern California to Detroit, right? And I love Detroit, but I get it. The weather is not as good, all that. It ain't going to take the pep out your step to take you from one of the most spectacular dunkers of all time and most electrifying players, period, into being a dude who, like, let's put it this way. He's the starting power forward on a team that loses more than twice as much as it wins. And that's my point. If Blake Griffin is your starting power forward, you're going to lose twice as much as you win. He's not that player anymore.
It depends on the team you're on.
I take no pleasure in saying that. It's what he is nowadays.
It depends on the team you're on. I definitely think you can still win with Blake Griffin. He don't need to be the focal point. He don't even need to be a top 2 option. But I do think that he's a starting forward in this game if he's interested in playing. I think what you're seeing in Detroit, unless he's not healthy, what you're seeing in Detroit is a man that is completely disinterested in playing for the Pistons organization. That's what I see right now. My man Troy Weaver on telling those boys they'll get together, but he doesn't want to be there.
I mean, I can't really blame him. You compare LA to Detroit, big difference there, but we look at the shots he's taking, not taking as many dunks this season, but according to Second Spectrum, his average distance of his shot is 18 feet this season. That is 4 feet longer than the likes of Chris Paul's, also Kevin Durant. So he's got some long distance in him. All right, guys, let's wrap it here. We have some. This is true. This is true. All right, guys, back to the NFL we go. Dak Prescott still in search of that long-term contract, but rumor has it he's not settling for anything but his own terms. Stay with us. And the Cowboys remains up in the air. Ed Warder joining Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin yesterday with his thoughts on what might happen next. Listen.
Unless the Cowboys give Dak Prescott exactly what he wants, I don't see Dak having any reason to do anything until the March 9th deadline to be designated a franchise player, because that's when he'll maximize his leverage. The numbers I hear for Dak are, hey, he's going to want 3 years and $40 million average. So $120 million for 3 years. I talked to Mike McCartney, who was the agent for Kirk Cousins, who's the only quarterback in the NFL to play on the tag twice, which is what Dak Prescott is looking at. And I think he felt like he had incredible leverage against Washington, and he converted that into an $84 million total guaranteed deal that remains the biggest in the NFL when he moved him to Washington after the second franchise. But I don't think he ever felt like he had the kind of leverage that Dak Prescott and Todd France have in the current negotiation between the Cowboys and Dak Prescott, because Dak's a far better, more accomplished quarterback than Kirk Cousins was at the time that he was tagged for the second time.
All right, we got Super Bowl champion Jeff Saturday joining us now, and Jeff, will get to you in just a second. But Max, I would like to start with you. If all of this is true, do you think that the Cowboys should pay Dak $40 million a season?
I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I'm at this place now. But the answer is yes. And what Ed Werder went on to say on Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin in the morning, ESPN Radio, check him out. was, which I think really crystallized it, how crazy the Cowboys have been through this whole process towards Dak is they so wanted that extra year of controls. Dak, we value you so much. You're so great. We want to keep you that 5th year. That instead of having control for 4 years, they have control for 1. We wanted that 5th so bad, we'll just take 1 instead of 4. What? Yes, I can't believe I'm saying Dak is worth 40. I mean, all these quarterbacks are worth more than that. If there was no salary cap, all the players would get paid more. So it's not like in an absolute sense. But given the percentage of the cap that takes up, listen, he's not Patrick Mahomes. You can't look what happened to the Goff deal, to the Wentz deal. Those are bad deals. I bet you those teams wish they could redo them. You sure you want to give Dak that money? But the leverage right now, guys, 2 things have happened. 1, Dak got hurt. And in Dak's absence, with Andy Dalton, who I thought was a pretty good choice as a backup, in Dak's absence, you saw what that offense looked like. It went from absolutely elite in the NFL, one of the very best, to not that, decidedly, right? That's 1. 2, look at the division they're in. Think of the leverage Dak has, not just because he's a good player, but oh my God, Washington just signed Heineke to a backup deal, right? That's backup money, and yet he may be their starter. We'll see. Daniel Jones from my New York Football Giants showed 0 improvement in year 2. Trust me. Year 1 and year 2, that's supposed to be your development year. And the Eagles, are you kidding? They're praying to get out of this Carson Wentz situation. Who knows what they'll get back for it, but they're going to give the job to Jalen Hurts. And the best thing Jalen Hurts has going for him at this point is that he's not Carson Wentz. Dak Prescott and the Cowboys are poised to run the division if they get this right. So it is enormous leverage. And considering the franchise tag is going to be over $37 million this year, what are we talking about? An extra couple million a year? Yeah, I never thought I'd get there and say, yeah, Dak's worth 40. To the Cowboys right now, he's worth 40.
I would agree with you if the injury had not taken place. The fact that the injury has taken place is cause for pause. I think that he should have gotten his money long before this season began, before that injury ever took place, which was what had me ticked off at Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys and how they treated this man. You're paying everybody else, but this man has been a model citizen. But attaching a level of pragmatism to this discussion, I would say based off of the injury that he has sustained, combined with the fact that you've got Aaron Rodgers making $33.5 million and you got Russell Wilson making $35 million. Jeff Saturday, educate me and tell me what's the insult about Dak Prescott getting $38 million, as opposed to the $39 million that Deshaun Watson is getting, or closer to the $45 million of a Patrick Mahomes. Deshaun Watson is a stud, and he's healthy, not coming off an injury. That justifies his money. Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't have to justify his money. Aaron Rodgers should be getting paid more money. Russell Wilson, one could argue, should be getting paid more money, and they're getting less. Dak Prescott has a couple, he's got a couple of playoff appearances and a playoff victory on his resume, okay? They also have a situation where he was in the lineup when they missed out on the playoffs last year because they wet the bed. They lost every game from Thanksgiving, one of the greatest holiday seasons of my career, Jeff Saturday. They lost every game from Thanksgiving through Christmas. I mean, it was just a beautiful, beautiful thing. I've never wanted to see Cowboy fans more in my life. I was looking for them. I actually put out an APB for Cowboy fans. I was looking for them all over the place, okay? So this is what happened. Dak Prescott was in the lineup on the field when those things happened. And so we have to remember that. And so, okay, Dak Prescott, we understand that, the market gives you what the market gives you. You get what you can. We get it. But it's not like it's the end of the world if they said, okay, $40 million is a bit steep. We want to sit up there and we think it's around the price of $38 million. Your franchise tag would have you at 37. We'd give you 38. We don't think you deserve more than Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes. I don't see anything wrong with that right now, guys.
Man, listen, first of all, you're dirty for doing the Cowboys like you just did. Just bringing up old stuff, just trying to little jabs on the way here.
I'm a truth teller,
with
Jeff.
This franchise in the disarray they're in right now that Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones have brought on themselves this craziness they pulled on. Listen, we could have had this conversation in 2019, and I would have agreed with you. 2020, you might could have persuaded me to, again, agree with you, Stephen A. 2021, ain't no way I'm agreeing with you. If I'm Dak Prescott, I have all the leverage right where I want it. I can sit here and play for this franchise tag. I will have made just under $70 million for the last 2 years, and I'm going to go somewhere and probably get $40 million a year. If I want to play for the Cowboys for 3 years at 40, guess what, Jerry? I earned it because I waited you out and I won the poker game, baby. You bluffed, I called your bluff, and now we're pushing all the chips all in, and I won. And if I'm Dak Prescott, that's exactly what I'm doing. And to your point, the one thing the Cowboys understand, why is the pressure so vital for them? Because the division is so bad. You're basically guaranteeing yourself a home playoff game the next 2 to 3 years if you sew up with Dak Prescott and get this team right. The issue was he's throwing for 500 yards. He's throwing for all these numbers before he gets injured. He's putting all this stuff. He's the only reason you're not getting totally blown out with as bad as your defense has played. If you can tweak that and get a little bit right, you're 9-7, 10-6 the next couple of years. You are literally printing money if you're Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones. The conversation should have been had in 2019, 2020. 2021, you're paying me every dime I want and how I want because that's where I am. Otherwise, I'm going to wait it out. All this sign and trade nonsense, why? Why would I have to do it? I'm going to wait a whole nother year. I'm going to get you again. I'm going to wait a whole nother year and see where I sit and which organization needs me. There are too many teams in the NFL, Max and Stephen A., that need quarterbacks of this quality. Is he a top 5 quarterback? No. You don't got to be. Kirk Cousins just showed everybody. You don't got to be a top 10 quarterback and club him over the head. Dak is a top 10 quarterback. He has waited his time. Now it's time to pay that man his money. I'm excited to see it.
Okay, but let me ask a question. So let's say, for example, they don't pay him his money and they franchise tag him for this upcoming season at $37 million. Where does that leave him after next season? Is he unrestricted at that particular moment in time?
Yeah, unless they want to franchise him again. He's sitting pretty, man. He's
right there.
That's
right there. Unless they want to franchise tag him again. So once again, you'd have to go on the field. Right? And you got to hope and pray that another nasty injury doesn't take place while you've got the long-term issues to
No, wait, Stephen A.
He just made.
Stephen A.
Listen,
time out.
Hold on.
He got.
He was franchised last year. He would be franchised this year.
Yeah,
if he was franchised this year, what would that?
So he'll make $70 million over the 2 tagged years.
Exactly.
If he gets a third one, he's making over $50 million for that tag. Over $50 million. Think about what that does to that cap.
Wow.
So you are crushing that team.
120 in 3 years.
You're
That's
sitting
40
there
a
getting
year.
paid. Oh, yeah. You just did it.
Right.
You just did it.
This is my point, Stephen A. If you look at it, he'll make his 120 in 3 years. Last year, by the way, the franchise tag, fully guaranteed. He got hurt early in the season, collected $32 million. This year, if he gets hurt again, he gets another 37. There's 70. If he gets 50, there's 120. Or what you could do right now if you're the Cowboys is lock him up for 120 for the following 3 years, be rid of the problem now and run the NFC East.
Yep.
Or at least offensively put yourself in a position to run the NFC East. Stephen A., I thought, listen, this is too much to give a quarterback who's not actually the elite of the elite. But the situation the Cowboys are in now, they got to give him his money. Well, I really think, Jeff, that Jerry strings this along just to keep us talking about them.
I didn't sit up there and say that they shouldn't give him his money, because what I'm saying is the question was whether he was worth it. You know, when I'm thinking in terms of you being worth it, I'm comparing you to the other guys. Of course, they're in a pinch because of how they negotiated themselves and you know, they hurt themselves, the Cowboys, and we're all good with that because we know that Dak Prescott deserved better from Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones up to this point. What I'm saying, however, is that we're walking around talking about Dak Prescott like there are no risks involved. And I think that when you're looking for a long-term deal, there is some risk, particularly in the sport of football and particularly when you're coming off such a nasty injury like he just had. That's all I'm saying.
Sign up to the deal and flip them into Deshaun Watson if you want. Both those guys can stay in state if you don't think Dak's worth the 40.
I'm going to say this.
All right, well, we can leave it there.
A wise man once told me, Stephen A.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, wise man once said, what a man will pay you for it is what it's worth. You pay me for it. I'm worth that $40 million because that's what you're going to have to pay to keep me. Don't compare me. That's what I'm worth. That's what that man will give me. I'm in for it. Go get it, Dak. I hope he gets every dollar and then some.
So do I.
All right, well, to be continued, guys, because now it is time to continue our QB Continued series. That's my quarterback. We've done it a couple days in a row, and today we are investigating the NFC, and it's time to look at the 49ers. So, Stephen A., who do you believe is going to be the starting quarterback in Week 1 this upcoming season for the 49ers?
Me personally, I think it's going to be Jimmy G. That's what I believe. I believe that, everybody's been talking about these other folks. The reality of the situation is that it comes down to what Max has said on numerous occasions. When he's in the lineup, the San Francisco 49ers win football games. I think they're 24-8 with Jimmy G as a starter. I think that's what we're looking at here. He's got a career situation where he's completed 67% of his passes, just like he did last year. I take that in consideration. I think about George Kittle being on this show not once but twice, raving about Jimmy G. I think about Richard Sherman raving about Jimmy G, along with others. They believe in this guy. They believe that when he's healthy, he's an incredible asset to the franchise. And so when I look at it from that perspective, and I think that the one thing that they're all pointing to is injuries, not anything else, then I'm going to assume that, they believe in Jimmy G, and why go in a different direction when they've already been to a Super Bowl with this guy? I think that's their mentality, and I think as a result of that, they hold on to him and they give him a chance to move the franchise forward.
Well, I think Jimmy G is underrated. He's a guy who wins 3 times as much as he loses, as you point out, Stephen A., for franchises where when he's not playing, they lose more than twice as much as they win. So he's obviously a lot better than the backups, right? And it's not like he's playing for guys who don't know offense, Shanahan and and Josh McDaniels. Like, he's been in situations where you think the backup could perform better. He's actually got value. But clearly, they're looking. Clearly, they think they can do better, right? It's out there too often. And where I look at is Atlanta, because I know they would take an enormous cap hit. I mean, they'd have to restructure something with Matt Ryan, but that team should be rebuilding. And Arthur Blank has said that Matt Ryan's going to have a voice in what happens in his future. And Shanahan is there in San Francisco, where they are loaded. And Jimmy G is doing a good job, but maybe they feel like the Rams felt with Goff, they can find someone who can do a better job. And even though Matt Ryan may be not what he once was, maybe they feel he's not what he once was, but maybe Shanahan looks at Matt Ryan and says, no, you give me that guy on this team. We got a defense too. We're going to be just fine. We can make a Super Bowl run. And I'll tell you why I think this also. Adam Schefter thinks this is going to be an unprecedented year of quarterbacks changing teams. We haven't really seen that yet. So as we go from team to team, I think some of these things are going to happen. And my guess is Matt Ryan in San Francisco.
Yeah, I think the Matt Ryan thing, from your perspective, the number I think is going to be the kicker for me. It's just I'm not sure how they work that out. Also, the age of Matt Ryan, like
35.
Quality of quality of upgrade for how long does that make you the powerhouse in the NFC? I'm not sure. I'm kind of with Stephen A. on this with the Jimmy G scenario possibly working itself out. I would say this, though, with all the movement that Schefter's talking about and that we're all talking about and anticipating, a guy like Derek Carr, for me, would be a guy who I think would fit in and could grow and develop with this, right? And we all know Gruden's always looking for the next great quarterback. It doesn't matter, like that's his MO, right? It's always the next guy for him is the guy that he wants. And so from Derek Carr's perspective, this guy has played better than people give him credit for. And I think for him, that type of situation, but with the movement that you're seeing in the NFL with all these quarterbacks saying, hey, I don't want to be in this situation, whether it's a Deshaun Watson type situation, finding that fit for Shanahan, I do think that is the piece that takes them back to the Super Bowl. And for all that we've said about Jimmy G winning and the ways he's won, availability is still the best ability. The guy gets hurt a bunch. And from my perspective, a guy blocking for you each and every week, the consistency of you showing up Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, there's something to that. So from the injury perspective alone, I would at least look around, from a leadership role, from all those things that you talked about, from like Richard Sherman talking about him and George Kittle. Respect, right? Those guys aren't just going to give you lip service, so I appreciate those things. But I do want a guy who's there every week. That has not been Jimmy G to this point in San Francisco.
Jeff, let me throw two. Let me bunch two questions together and just throw it at you. I get that. I understand what you're saying. But the flip side to it is that Matt Ryan has had 3 consecutive losing seasons. I have to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
And number 2, and more importantly, here's what really, it's not even the losses, because, a lot of that was injury related and, especially problems on your defensive side of the ball. I get that. But I'm also looking at a Matt Ryan that couldn't get it done, even though you had Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. I mean, am I supposed to ignore that, Jeff? Am I supposed to ignore that?
He didn't have the Niners defense.
No. Yeah, but
still, Max.
Listen, you have to. Yeah, I agree with you, Stephen A. I'll say this part about Matt Ryan. The thing that has been probably the most damning for what he's done are those things. Is he has been loaded with talent at the skill position, right? Whether it's receiver, even tight ends through his career, running backs when he had 2 really good running backs simultaneously, all of those things, and they still couldn't quite get it done from the offensive perspective, or they couldn't win it, right? We know the Patriots meltdown, all those kinds of things. But when you look at Matt Ryan, the age for me is why you might necessarily want to make that flip, right? Like you said, 35 years old, going in, because I do not believe that if he goes there, automatically they're the Super Bowl favorites. If I believe that guy, like if a Deshaun Watson went there, you would probably say they're now going to be the favorite in the NFC. As crazy as that sounds with Tom Brady,
I just don't think, Jeff, that they have enough.
Yeah.
I don't think they have enough to get Deshaun Watson. I'm looking around at teams like, realistically, who's going to wind up where? I don't see Deshaun Watson in San Francisco, right? So I start looking around, and you talk about age. Well, they're built to win now, San Francisco. And like the Rams, they're thinking we'll pay a premium to upgrade. Even though we have a pretty good guy, we think we can get a better guy that will know how to use better. Matt Ryan hasn't looked good recently. He's been playing for bad teams. The coach got fired. When Shanahan left, basically that team fell apart. Remember, their offense was so much ahead of everyone else's. We were like, boy, the NFC is going to have to deal with this for years. And it didn't turn out that way once Shanahan left. Meantime, Matt Ryan, for a 4-win team, he had more attempts and more completions than anyone in the league. They were throwing it a lot all the time. You're playing from behind. You're not on a very good team. And he was made to look worse than I think he is right now because of the cap hit. And I believe they'd restructure his deal to try to figure something out so it wouldn't be like a $40 million cap hit. Because of that, he'll probably come cheap. And I think it comes down to, does the head coach survey the landscape and think, who's the best available guy for what I want to do? And I would think that Shanahan would look at Ryan and think, we can get him. We can actually get him, and he'll be an improvement.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we are looking at Matt Ryan, since winning MVP back in 2016, he is ranked 13th in QBR among qualified passers. All right, guys, we have one more team in this QB